Good afternoon. Yes, you have to start behaving now. We have almost all of our chairs full up here on the stage. We're just waiting for one more. Well, we're so delighted that you could be with us here this afternoon for the Member Show #1. My name is Carolyn Dufurrena. I am privileged to be the host of this afternoon's session, which is sponsored by Edmund Littlefield, and we are delighted to have that sponsorship. As you can see, we have quite a lineup here this afternoon, and so since I'm standing at the microphone, I'm going to go ahead and start, and then I'll be introducing this rowdy mob shortly. All right. The theme for this afternoon's show is women, the she of the ranching family, and you'll see that there are a lot of different takes on that role, and I'm going to leave that at that. So I'm gonna start out with a poem that's not really a cowboy poem. I started out my adult life as a geologist, so I came to Nevada and fell in love with a cowboy and became a one-room school teacher. But before that, I thought about rocks all the time. And so I studied quartz and all of its forms. And this poem is called Cairn, and it's about a statue in front of the Nevada Museum of Art in Reno. So, Cairn, women sculpted of stones. She crouches there in autumn sunshine, human form outlined in steel. Grandmother, filled with stones, held back by structure from the angle of repose. White quartz cobbles, pieces of the earth, tumbled down canyon river, gathered fragments of our mother. So feminine to remain, to permit abrasion beneath running water's surface, to be made smooth, not soft. Quartz is nearly hard as diamond in the mineral scheme of things, yet beneath the weight of mountains, quartz flows. The stones are individuals at first glance, but closer scrutiny reveals another truth. Bonded rows of atoms, as though locking arms, shift as one. Translation, we call it. Boundaries between grains press inexorably together, so tightly we name them sutures. And so, we are sutured by the weight of mountains, by the press of experience, metamorphosed into each other, translated into another harder version of ourselves, welded, smoothed, female, sustained heavy pressure. In the end, it makes us stronger. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce our youngest member. Her name is Bridget, and she has been coming to the gathering for 11 of her 12 years, which I am impressed. She's going to do Wallace McRae's poem, Hollyhocks.
They were probably planted there by the gate, or along the fence of the water gap lot, where the milk cows lazed and the work teams ate, chicken wired out of the garden plot. Why? Didn't she know they'd scatter around, their seeds infecting our vegetable garden? Magenta blooms fought for fertile ground, crowding and choking, begging no pardon of the carrots and beets in militant rows, cut down by the shrapnel of golly. From ambush they fell like dominoes. In retreat we skirmished to save the beans for the...
And I'm going to very quickly just introduce the crew here. Vess Quinlan will go next. D.W. Groethe. D.W. go after that. Elizabeth Ebert, Linda Hussa, Gary McMahan, Randy Rieman, who's sitting out of order. He just does that because he knows I'm a school teacher. Rodney Nelson, who's, you know, down on that end for a reason, and a Wallace McRae.
Well, thank you all for coming. This should be a good show, and I'll try to start it right. Anyone who's ever calved a set of first calf heifers will have seen an amazing, nearly instant transformation from a creature that will spook and run at the slightest excuse into a mother that will stand and fight a monster to protect her baby. Makes one wonder at the contradiction and think perhaps the female of the species owns most of life's essential magic. The only human female contradictions I have any experience with are ranch-raised women. My grandmother, my mother, my wife, and my daughter. They have provoked more than a few poems over the years. I did not always like these women. There was a little too much wipe your feet, don't bring that in here, you can't do that, and where the hell have you been to suit me? My grandmother used to say things like, if you've seen one damn rodeo, you've seen them all. Unless your kids are riding bulls. She called us next year people. I cleverly named this poem, The Next Year People. The preacher picked us out of a stream of stock show enthusiasts walking toward the entrance gates on an icy sidewalk. He approached, spraying spittle, pointing with a grimy hand and shouting loudly, "Are you a person of faith? Do you believe, madam?" Uh-oh, I thought, nobody. But nobody shouts at grandma. Later, over ice cream, she said, "I've been thinking about that sidewalk preacher and what he said. I should have stopped and told him of our faith. It is pure faith to turn bulls in and believe that come spring there will be rambunctious, white-faced calves, bucking and bawling and butting heads. When we bury tiny, fragile seed a quarter-inch deep in dry soil, we believe a miracle of great lushness will happen to feed our stock. Is that not faith? When hard times come, we hang on like leeches and believe that next year it won't hail out our grain or rain on the alfalfa windrows. Next year, all the cows will twin and we'll be able to pay the bank." Oh yes, I should have told him. We believe and have great faith because we are next year people.
This is a poem song that I wrote probably 15 years ago at least. No, almost 20 now. Somebody's getting older up here. It can't be me. The gal I was going with at the same, her Carhartts and mine died about the same time. You know, they come with a lifetime supply of starch. And when they finally get to the point where you can wear them without actually, you know, forcing your knees, then they rot. And then you patch them because you don't want to go through the pain of more starch. Well, we both got to the point where we had to buy new ones. So I wrote this for her and me. Oh, and I willingly admit to stealing the melody from the chorus from Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. He's dead. I don't think he cares. It's called the Carhartt song, although most people call it the Sweethearts and Carhartts. Them big city gals are natural at turning good cowboys around, dressed in their big city finery. They'll waltz a good hand to the ground. Oh, I know, 'cause I've been there myself, boys. Please take a word from the wise. Oh, there's far more to beauty, I'm certain, far more than what meets the eye. Oh, consider the gal that you're hitched to. She'll be there when you make a stand. Maybe them bibs ain't from Perry, but who cares? She's one heck of a hand. My sweetheart's the gal in the Carhartts. She's a wonderful kind of gal. Helps with calving in springtime, gathers herd in the fall. There's no one I'd rather depend on. And though them bibs don't look like much, underneath that brown duck is most of my luck. And I'll love her till the day that I die. Oh, it's not that she looks like that always, just when there's work to be done. Whenever we can, we pull slack time, and we're off to go dance and have fun. She'll put on a snug pair of blue jeans, a shirt with some frills on the side, and she'll outclass them big city sweethearts as across that old dance floor we glide. My sweetheart's the gal in the Carhartts. She's a one-of-a-kind of gal. Helps with calving in springtime and gathers the herd in the fall. There's no one I'd rather depend on. And though them bibs don't look like much, underneath that brown duck, most of my luck, and I'll love her till the day that I die. Underneath that brown duck is a gal that can chuck square bells with the best of the guys. Thank you. Thank you. I have a short poem here that I wrote it years and years ago for somebody that who's not only a good friend, but somebody that I admire mightily in her writing and her friendship. Elizabeth Ebert. And I asked her first, I said, look, I won't tell him I wrote this for you if it'll embarrass me. And being the true ranch, she goes, I don't care. It's wonderful. And I'm keeping it here because sometimes I forget it. It's called When She Speaks. When she speaks, words dance, deftly swirling around bits of chance that tease her heart into rollicky.
This poem is called The Tea Set. She never, oh boy, I can't even start it. She never did quite understand just how she chanced to meet the darkly handsome stranger who swept her off her feet. He'd come from somewhere further west, said he had a ranch out there. She never asked about his past. Somehow she didn't care. She ignored the warnings of her friends, and before the week was through, she rode away, the brand new bride of a man she scarcely knew. She only took one thing with her, but that one thing meant a lot. 'Twas a fragile china tea set with a painted Chinese pot. He sneered when she unwrapped it, and he scorned the tea she made, and his darkly surly silence made her suddenly afraid. He'd ride off nearly every night, and as her tears would start, she'd warm her hands upon the pot, but nothing warmed her heart. She was glad about the baby, thought perhaps that he might change, that they'd become a family, make friends there on the range, but it didn't make the difference that she hoped that it might do. He only grew more secretive, and the child was sullen too. He'd leave the ranch to run itself, and ride on down the trail. He always wore his pistols, and she knew he'd been in jail. She'd be left alone with just the boy, sometimes for days on end. She hardly ever saw a soul. She never had a friend. And if she dared to question him, he'd answer angrily. And once, when he had found her seeking solace from her tea, he grabbed the fragile china cup and crushed it on the floor. Then he cursed her, and he slapped her, and he strode out through the door. As she picked the shattered fragments up, her face tear-stained and pale, she heard the hoofs go galloping back down that hell-bent trail. They brought him home across his horse one day at dawn's first light. Some men she did not recognize. They said there'd been a fight. She asked of them no question. She closed the collar around his throat so the rope burns wouldn't show. She dug a grave and buried him back on a little mound, wrote his name upon a headboard, and built a fence around. For family ties are family ties, and each must claim his own. She only wished to shield their son, for the boy was almost grown. But he had not died quite soon enough, for his son had learned his ways, and he too rode the midnight trails and squandered all his days. They found him with some stolen steers. He was guilty, they could see. So with vigilante justice, they hung him from a tree. She came and cut the body down and placed it in the plot. In her mind, there was no question if there was guilt or not. She did not make excuses, did not condone the sin, but family ties are family ties, and you bury your own kin. She could not bear to face the dawn. She hated sunset more. She brooded through the daytimes, and at night she walked the floor. She railed at God, she bowed in prayer, she struggled with her doubt. Then, one day, she squared her shoulders, and she brought the tea set out. She washed the thin, translucent cups in the painted Chinese pot, and brewed herself a cup of tea, all clear and steaming hot. She built fire. I'm stuck. She tallied up her losses, neither mother now nor wife. Then she pulled the ranch together, and she built herself a life. And she became a legend in the country round about. Her door was always open, and the welcome mat was out. She'd stir the fire, brew the tea, all clear and steaming hot, and fill the dainty little cups from the painted Chinese pot. And no one ever laughed or scoffed, and no one called her strange. But those grizzled old cowpunchers, the bronc busters off the range, and the bankers and the buyers of those days that used to be, would recall with awe the lady who invited them to tea.
You notice how she didn't read that, she memorized it? It's because she doesn't have any glasses. Elizabeth, you're a show-off. Recently I was asked, "Are you a cowboy poet?" Well, I didn't know if the question was gender or genre. But I think Buck Ramsey answered that when he welcomed us all into what he called the cowboy tribe. So am I a cowboy poet? Spurs on my boots, ride the outside circle, catch calves with a hula hand loop. Am I a cowboy poet? I welded up a gate, and when the wind blows just right, it sings like a flute. Am I a welder poet? Maybe I'm a jazz poet. I waitressed in a Mexican restaurant and bar on the wrong side of town, and I could write up some poems that would curl your hair. Does that make me a beautician poet? With a wheelbarrow and a shovel, I unloaded a railroad car of coal for $50. I was darn sure a hungry poet. I raised 7 honkers from down to feather. I taught them to swim in the pond. I jumped for joy the first time they flew. I called them out of the sky, and they landed at my feet. And I cried when they joined a flight of wild geese going away. But I'm not an ornithologist, lifeguard, cheerleader, Mother Goose poet. Pulled my cow dog's tooth, not a dental poet. Splinted a used broken leg with a boot, not a doctor poet. Keep our books straight and pay our taxes on time, because I don't want to end up a jailhouse poet. Cowboys have amused me, danced me, romanced me. A cowboy showed me his desert, and I've ridden beside him for 40-some years. He taught me to be still and listen. He pushed me to bravery that might never have been mine. He gave me a daughter. That cowboy calls me out from cooking supper to watch the moon rise. And when I dance in the rain, he says, "Sunshine, come on inside and let it all hit."
So, I'll do you one my grandmother wrote. She wrote it as a poem about 18 years into her marriage. The marriage lasted for another 55 years. Nobody ever saw that poem. I'm sorry, the marriage lasted for 55 years. But nobody ever saw that poem until the winter my granddad died, and she hand copied it 7 times, sent it to her 7 children. And I saw it hanging on my mother's bedroom wall. I didn't change a word of it. It's written from a woman's point of view, but she's my grandma, so thought I could get by with singing it. She was a stockman's wife, and she wrote this to him. When my husband comes in from his work, tired and cold, tell you right now, I never do scold, but find him a chair in some cozy nook, and have quite handy his paper and book. Then I in my corner sit down to mend, most hoping this evening never will end. But pretty soon he says softly to me, "Come over here, dear, and sit on my knee." Now you may think I'm a bride of a year, but that's where you are mistaken, my dear. For 18 years and more pass by since first I did say my husband and I. And off in their bedrooms, asleep in their beds, the moonlight reveals 7 bright shiny heads, pressed tight to their pillows in dreamland they, 3 girls and 4 boys come to our house to stay. And when to manhood and womanhood grown, and from the old home nest our babies have flown, we're gone together as in days gone by, for we are still sweethearts, my husband and I.
That was gorgeous. Well, the topic is women. And you'll never meet a man who spent more time contemplating that topic to learn so little about it. Well, maybe you will. In 29 years of recitations at Elko, I've never read a poem. I may not be able to read this one. I understand that Ken Burns has done a phenomenal job of covering the Dust Bowl in the United States, and although I've not seen his film concerning the Dust Bowl, I can recall seeing a lot of photographs from the Dust Bowl days, and some of those photos were pictures of my own family. My mother was the youngest of 13 children who lived in a tent with a dirt floor until she was 5 years old. And I can recall how she and all her little siblings were literally dressed in rags. And we just don't know about hard times compared to some generations before us. Will Ogilvie and Henry Lawson and Banjo Patterson have brought us poems about the Australian outback. And this is one of Henry Lawson's poems about a woman who's reached the end of her rope. It's called Past Karen. Now up and down the sidling brown, the great black crows are flying. And down below the spur I know another milker's dying. The crops have withered from the ground. The tank's clay bed is glaring. And from my heart, no tear nor sound, for I have got past Karen. Past worrying or caring, past looking up or caring. From my heart no tear nor sound, for I have got past Karen. Through death and trouble turn about, through hopeless desolation, through flood and fire, fever, drought, slavery and starvation, through childbirth, sickness, hurt and blight, and nervousness and scaring, through being left alone at night, I'm grown to be past Karen. past bothering or caring, past feeling or despairing. Through city cheats and neighbor spite, I'm grown to be past caring. Our first child took in days like these a cruel week in dying, all day upon her daddy's knees or on my poor breast lying. The prayers we shed, the tears we shed were awful, wild, despairing. I've pulled 3 through and buried 2 since then, and I'm past caring, past looking up and caring, past feeling and despairing. I've pulled 3 through and buried 2 since then, and I'm past caring, past wearing and despairing. Now, I only wish to be beyond all signs of caring. For up and down the sidling brown, the great black crows are flying. And down below the spur I know another milker's dying. The crops have withered from the ground. The tank's clay bed is glaring. And from my heart, no tear, no sound, for I have got past caring.
I didn't bring my wife along with me. I used to bring her here. But it's hard for her to get away in the wintertime when there's cattle to feed. And it's a problem carrying for her anyway. The last time I took her around a lot of people, I took her into Bismarck to one of those malls, and I lost her within a few minutes. I looked all over, I couldn't find her, and finally way in the back of one of those stores, I saw a little old man walking around in circles, and I said, "What are you doing anyway?" He said, "I'm looking for my wife." I said, "I'm looking for mine too." Well, he said, "Maybe we could join forces and help each other out. What does your wife look like?" Well, I said, "She's about 5'11", slim as a buggy whip, cuter than a bug's ear, and has a smile like a pile of diamonds. What does your wife look like?" "Never mind," he said, "let's just look for yours." You know, in North Dakota, I grew up in almost a pure ranching area, and yet a lot of people wouldn't think of it as a ranching area because we have to do a lot with machinery. Because we have 6 months where we have to feed those cattle, and whether we like it or not, the machines are a part of our lives. And men and women on those little ranches are always important to one another. It seems like a daily aggravation. On the Nelson Ranch, I'd say, I may be feeding cattle or I may be making hay, but I need to use a tractor. You know those machines that have no heart? And when I really need mine most, they'll refuse to start. Well, the first step is the jumper cables. They'll sometimes start them quick, but all too often, it seems to me, they just won't do the trick. So I go in to see the missus. I tell her, "Honey, you're beautiful. And would you have a minute, dear? I seem to need a pull." She gets this stricken, wild-eyed look. She's had this job before, and she's still protesting wildly as I drag her out the door. I tell her that this ranching life can be pleasant as a dream, and no job can be too tough if we work together as a team. And I try to build her confidence. There's nothing to it, dear. Just let that clutch out easy and drive in second gear. Tempers rise a little and almost cause a rift when she kills the engine once or twice because she tries to start in fifth. Well, she finally gets it shifted right. I cannot help but smirk. Then I set right down and hang on hard. I'm ready for the jerk. You can tell that woman anything, but you just can't tell her much. I've showed her at least 1,000 times, but she always drops the clutch. I think the inventor of nylon rope had rural wives in mind. Well, anyway, we get things going. I'm trailing along behind. That old case finally coughs and starts. The exhaust is burning black. I'm back there waving wildly, but the missus won't look back. So we're cruising down the driveway. I'm yelling till it aches. I finally get the old girl's attention when I leap up on the brakes. She's mad by now and tells me that if I'm so doggone smart, instead of acting like a fool, I could tell her when they start. When she goes back to the house, I follow a general rule. I won't get close to her again till she's had some time to cool. You know, I sometimes yearn for the single life, but when I consider all the factors, I'm mighty thankful for the missus when I need to start them tractors.
Kind of a long walk for an old guy. I would really like to thank Bridget Reedy for coming out here and doing my poem, Grandmother's French Hollyhocks. I came here last year and she and her father John came up to me and introduced themselves, and they are from Boulder, Montana, and Bridget said, I've memorized a poem of yours, and I could not believe, I thought it would be some 8-liner or something like that. And when she recited, this was down in the Pioneer Hotel, when she finished reciting Grandmother's French Hollyhocks, I had a tear in my eye and part of it ran down my cheek, and I hope that, I hope I can get through this one because it's another poem that is hard for me to do. I'm wearing a vest that my daughter Allison made for me for mostly this Cowboy Poetry Gathering and some others. It's not the only gift that our daughter Allison gave me. She gave me all of the words in this poem called Urban Daughter. She says, I miss the sound the gate makes in the heifer calving lot. Till I was grown and gone, I didn't know it made a noise. I guess I never realized that horses smelled so good. I suppose I was distracted by dolls, play clothes, and toys. The currants and the wild plums have such sweet scents when they blossom. There are no cottonwoods that rustle where we live. In the mornings in Tacoma, the 2-year-olds don't summon babies with their bawling. Sometimes I think I'd give a month's good city wages just to wander once again on the creek bank as I gather a wild rosebud bouquet for the table. Did you know each rose has 5 frail petals? I forgot about the curlews until I heard one call today. Maggie saw some antelope. She looked at me and them and whined. She's too old to chase them now, I would suppose. She reminded me of Angela. Antelope were her downfall. She just vanished, disappeared. And no one really knows, I guess, what happened to her. Or did you know and never tell? My job is going great. We've lots of friends. You wouldn't think I'd miss that butte when we've got Mount Rainier. But here you have horizons and the sky here never ends. I should get Mom's recipes, although I seldom cook much now. Oh, the seafood's great.
It was first crop, and I was feeding the hay crew. We were just starting out with a year's lease on 800 head of cows and a bunch of flood-irrigated alfalfa on the edge of the Black Rock Desert. It was my rookie year as a rancher's wife and my rookie year as a ranch cook. Not that I didn't have experience entertaining. I thought, as I paged through my cookbooks, I had a trunk full of journals from my mentor, my great-aunt Gertrude, detailing years of Chicago bridge luncheons and brunches, each entry annotated with notes the following day, and all ending with the words, "a great success." I knew how to fold a napkin, how to decoratively peel a cucumber. Of course I could feed people. "We'll be in at noon," Tim threw over his shoulder on his way out that morning. "The stacking crew will be here, so there'll be 6 or 7 of us." The June sun ripened as I considered the menu. My young son and I gardened, gathering lettuce, the last of the peas. Ah, I thought, wiping the perspiration from my eyes, a summer soup would be just the thing. When the men came in to wash, the table was all set, dishes sparkling, napkins folded attractively. Each place featured a lovely garnished bowl of smooth green soup. A single quiche Lorraine was daintily sliced in the table's center. There'd be 1 piece left over, I thought. I'd counted. Pleasantries exchanged. Ray, the contract harrow bed operator, sat first. 6'4", he's a broad-shouldered Basco who ate at ranch tables all around the county. I knew the report of my first summer luncheon would spread quickly throughout the land. "This soup's cold," he exploded. "Of course," I replied. "What the hell's in it?" he fired back. He looked incredulously at the smooth green surface, the basil leaves artfully garnishing the center, no doubt suspecting pond algae or moss from the trough. "It's potage Saint-Germain. It's a puree of spring peas and lettuce. It's supposed to be cold." I explained forcefully, certain that I could elevate the palates of this worthy but provincial group. Tim's 2 brothers and the 3 field hands ducked their heads to hide their faces and ate. It didn't take long. Someone reached for a slice of quiche. "Got any ketchup?" I was horrified. "What about the delicate blend of herbs and spices?" I thought. Tim gave me the look, however, and I bit my lip. "Oh, fine," I thought, and went to the fridge, visualizing the line under Auntie Gertrude's luncheon entry, "Evaporate." A great success indeed. Miffed at the ketchup issue, I moved things around in the refrigerator until true disaster struck. Tim appeared at my shoulder, speaking softly into the relative privacy of the produce drawer. "Where's the meat?" "Meat?" I said, wonderingly. "This is a summer luncheon." He started digging in the freezer for pork chops. It had taken the men about 30 seconds to inhale the lovely quiche triangles, and they were looking at me expectantly. I was stumped. Tim fried some chops and reheated potatoes while I salved my dignity, and the men somehow finished their meal. I never heard the stories that must have made the rounds with the hay crew that summer, but I am sure I was temporarily famous. Over the years, of course, I've learned to make great masses of stew and sourdough biscuits and giant pots of beans to haul up to branding, All my soups are hot now, and there are no delicate blends of herbs and spices, unless I'm cooking for my friends. Still, every once in a while, I can't resist putting a soft-boiled egg down in front of a cowboy in an egg cup. Thank you.
Oh boy. I would take jobs on remote ranches when Arlen and I were first married. Neighbors were few and scattered, and long days horseback would leave her alone with 2 babies. I'd feel guilty about when she'd talk about high school friends that had real jobs in town and were able to buy a home and worked reasonable hours and could take paid vacations. And I started this with contradictions. We've been married for 52 years, and I'm not quite sure I understand her any better than I did the day we got married. There's 2 of these poems, and they're companion poems written along many years apart. The first one comes from watching her when we tried to live in town for a little while. It's called The Trouble with Dreams. She followed me to ranches that were a long way from anywhere, made sad houses smile when they hadn't in years. She would sometimes cry to be so far from family with only distant neighbors, dogs, and me. A mother's work brought less distress, but still dreams. An apartment, shopping, movies. A good, safe job where cows would not run over me or horses fall and break my legs. We would make new friends and go to elegant parties. She would work in a bright little gift shop. There would be no more full ashtrays and dirty coffee cups. No cowmen to talk of debt and drought. No ripe smell of manured boots. No combiotic in the refrigerator. No half-frozen calves on the porch. No dust blowing in the house. And no mud tracked on her kitchen floor. Now the dreams are true. I write my little poems. She swims in the pool, soaks in the hot tub, goes shopping, and hides the tears I know are there. Finally, she asks if I might find some cowmen to visit, talk about cows, fill the ashtrays, and track mud on her kitchen floor. I so you'll understand my confusion. In spite of the apparent contradiction in behavior, I decided she deserved an apology for my young man's lack of sensitivity. This poem is called The Apology. Did you ever step across a horse in the chill before the dawn and leave a woman wondering how long you would be gone? She'd know you were home when she heard you at the door. You'd not even say what pasture you were headed for. Gave no thought that she might worry when you were out way late. Maybe lie awake and listen hard, trying to hear you at the gate.
She's there. This is a song I wrote a long time ago for her. She was 9 years old at the time. Rodney Nelson, and her folks are ranchers. And she's now a senior in college. What can I say? She came up to me, she said, D-Dub, I really like your music, but I can't. My mom won't let me sing it out loud, and I go, why? Because there's words in there I can't say. So I said, tell you what, for my next CD, I'll write a song that you can sing. It'll just be yours. She goes, okay. And I thought she'd forget. But no. That's when I learned kids are like pit bulls. So eventually I lied to her when she asked me if I had a title, and I said, yes, Rodeo Sweetheart. And I knew I was screwed. Here's Rodeo Sweetheart, fortunately turned into a song I really like. turns her world around a clover leaf, sparkling nice, smiling sweet, and there's no way you'll stand a chance. She don't fool with no romance. She'll make her ride and low and go, running down the road to a rodeo. What she wants most is a winning time, flying like a zephyr with the devil behind, heading to a rodeo down the line. She's got her pony, old midnight, when they hit the road, everything's just right. Dreaming dreams of the NFR. If you want her love, you won't get far. 'Cause she'll make that ride, then low and go, running down the road to a rodeo. What she wants most is a winning time, and flying like a zephyr with the devil behind, heading to a rodeo down the line. The day will come when she'll pull back, maybe cut some cowboy slack, but until then don't ever mind, 'cause she turns her world on rodeo time. Yeah, she'll make that ride, then load and go, running down the road to the rodeo. What she wants most is a winning time, and flying like a zephyr with the devil behind, heading to a rodeo down the line. She'll make that ride, then load and go, running down the road to a rodeo. What she wants most is a winning time, and then flying like a zephyr with the devil behind, heading to a rodeo down the line. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to stand here and hang on the podium so you can't see how my knees shake. This poem is called Rich Man's Lady. I awoke one dismal morning with a gray front moving in, with aching bones from 2 long hours, just dreading to begin the tasks that loomed like mountains, the endless, thankless work that ranch wives share with ranchers, that doubles if they shirk. And I thought how wonderful 'twould be to wake one day and find I'd become a rich man's lady, and I left this ranch behind. I poured a cup of coffee, but no maid appeared with tray, so I rustled up some breakfast to start us on our day. I found no Gucci slippers, no Chanel or Dior suits, so I donned my grubby coveralls, pulled on my well-worn boots. No Rolls Royce came to transport this rural fashion plate, so I trudged on down to the corral behind my rancher mate. I swung the heifer gate myself, the butler wasn't there, and I pondered life's inequities, those things that don't seem fair. And that was when I saw it. Just a wobbly, white-faced thing struggling up to suck his mama, the first calf of the spring. Something special seems to happen when that first calf hits the ground. It's an attitude adjuster, makes your thoughts go all profound, makes the day seem so much brighter, even though the sun don't shine, makes you want to count your blessings, as I now am counting mine. I've preferred cows for rubies. They graze on emerald grass. The winds, my private orchestras, serenade me as they pass. My gold is summer sunshine, my silver, autumn frost. I've sky and space and air to breathe, and need not count their cost. I've love to smooth the rough spots, and arms to hold me tight. I've laughter to begin the day, and prayer to bless the night. For true wealth isn't what you own, it's found in what you share. And I'm a rancher's lady, and I'm rich beyond compare.
I hope some of you remember Sharon and Patrick O'Toole. Sharon hasn't come for a few years, but they ranch cattle and sheep on the Wyoming-Colorado border. And she was telling me about some really great advice that her husband gave her daughter when she took a job in New York City at some firm in a very, very tall building downtown. And she said, "Dad, I have to introduce myself to the board, and I'm not quite sure what I should say." And he said, "Say, my name is Bridget O'Toole, and I castrate sheep with my teeth." I never heard the outcome. Sometimes it's pretty tough for women on ranch as well. Totally. Especially when they have to make soup. But they do the work. They're the right-hand person. They know how to pull somebody to start their tractor. And sometimes maybe they nearly lose the person they are. And so this poem is called "The Undoing of Heaven's Match." She's returning books borrowed against the echo of an empty house. Never read them, I bet. Doesn't taste the coffee I set before her. So deep in the blues. Husband's gone from a marriage that took her from one end of her 30s to the other. Supper's ready. She says she can't stay. Red silk blouse says she's on the hunt of something in town. But no time will get close without a collision on the sorrow she wears. And the key, she asked the night, wasn't I woman enough for him? Or wasn't I enough of a man?
Well, I'd like to take the quality of this thing down a notch or two. How many people here remember Howard Parker? Well, he wrote one called Ranch Women. I'm going to do it for you, and I'm doing it for old Howard, too. Howard knew a thing or two about women, you know, because he divorced Jeannie and then they lived together in sin. They'd been happier than they'd ever been before. I never did quite figure out how that works, but it seems like Howard had her down. But here's his poem, Ranch Women. Now you've seen these ranch women, and I've known some in my day that'd take on any cowboy and beat him 40 ways. Menfolk in their life had run off or up and died. Still, they held the place together, raised a family on the side. Their faces bore the marks of weather, the wind and rain and snow, and their clothes would make old rawhide look like a style show. But now, I've seen these ranch women on the silver screen, and I've seen them on TV, and their contribution to the West was a bafflement to me. Most any situation, they just stand around and weep why they couldn't find an Angus cow out in a flock of sheep. She wore a brand new Stetson, tilted back on curly locks, and it's shaped just like the day that it come out of the box. And her blouse has just one button, and it's sitting mighty low, and she's got some things some gals would kill for just about to show. Well, the ranch is in grave danger. She just might lose it all. A crooked sheriff, a crooked banker there for closing in the fall. And then comes loping across the sagebrush, mounted on a fiery steed. It's old John Wayne to the rescue of this damsel in dire need. There'll be fist fights and gunplay while the maid is overjoyed to be rescued from situations that a half-wit could avoid. Well, it has a happy ending. John saves the ranch, and they ride off in the sunset at the ending of the show. Well, from the ranch women I have known, I just have this to say. They damn sure didn't need John Wayne. Hell, he'd have just been in the way.
In 1995, I went to England and Wales to do a 15-city tour of cowboy poetry with Rod McQuarrie and Sue Wallace, Paul Zarziski, and myself for the Year of Literature in the United Kingdom. And I'm not quite sure how we qualified for the Year of Literature in the United Kingdom, but it really had a lot of fun. And while we were there, we visited Rudyard Kipling's country estate, and I have a picture of Paul hugging a tree because it's about the only thing he recognized there. And so I'm going to do a Rudyard Kipling poem. And we've been pretty specific about ranch women. This is not, are there any non-ranch women out here? I'm not prejudiced. I like non-ranch women too. This is more a universal poem, and it again is from a man's perspective, for whatever that's worth. When the Himalayan peasant meets the he-bear in his pride, he will shout to scare the monster, who will oft-times turn aside. But the she-bear, thus accosted, rends the peasant tooth and nail, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. When Nag, the basking cobra, hears the careless foot of man, he will try to wriggle sideways and avoid it if he can, but his mate makes no such motion where she sleeps beside the trail, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. When the early Jesuit fathers preached to Hurons and Choctaws, they prayed to be delivered from the vengeance of the squaws. 'Twas the women, not the warriors, turned those stark enthusiasts pale, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. Man's tender heart is bursting with the things he dare not say, for the woman that God gave him isn't his to give away. But when husband meets with hunter, each confirms the other's tale. The female of the species is more deadly than the male. Man's a bear in most relations, worm and savage otherwise. Man propounds negotiations. Man accepts the compromise. Very rarely will man squarely push the logic of a fact to its ultimate conclusion in unmitigated act. Fear or foolishness compels him, ere he lay the wicked low, to concede some sort of trial, even to his darkest foe. Fear or foolishness impels him. Forgive me for this. Mirth obscene diverts his anger. Doubt and pity oft perplex him in dealing with a problem to the scandal of the sex. But the woman that God gave him, every fiber of her frame has been launched for one sole issue, armed and engined for the same. And to serve that single issue, lest the generations fail, the female of the species must be deadlier than the male. She who faces death by torture for each life beneath her breast may not deal in doubt or pity, must not swerve for fact or jest. Those are purely male. I knew I should have abandoned this a long time ago. These are purely male diversions, not in these her honor dwells. She, the other law we live by, is that law and nothing else. She can bring no more to living than the powers that make her great, as the mother of the infant, as the mistress to the mate. And when man and babe are lacking, and she strides unclaimed to claim her right as femme and barren, her equipment is the same. She is wedded to convictions in default of grosser ties. Her contentions are her children. Heaven help him who denies. He will meet no suave persuasion, but the wicked, white-hot, wild, wakened female of the species, warring as for man and child. Unprovoked and deadly charges, even so the he-bear fights. Speech that drips, convicts, and poisons.
I forgot what I was going to say. I been married for 31 years, so I've been married longer than I was single, and I guess I was single for a long enough time where I didn't think I'd ever would get married. But I took a girlfriend to a rodeo in Gallup, New Mexico, and I wound up getting married in Albuquerque on the way home, and same girl I took down there, and. It was kind of an economy wedding. It cost me $15. That included the license and the blood tests. And the judge said, never charged us a thing. He said, "You two are the first couple that ever been in my chambers that looked old enough to make this decision." So I said marrying Terry was kind of like buying a used pickup. My original investment wasn't a whole lot, but it takes a lot of bucks to keep her running. So she's had me longer than my mother had me, and if I didn't turn out the way that she thought I should be, it should be her fault. And she's mad at me a good share of the time. I don't know why. I don't do anything wrong. And you know, I try to talk my way out of those deals, and sometimes I can. Sometimes you can say the right words and smooth everything out, but there's other times, boy, you got to dig in your pocket and try to buy her something to cheer her up. But you know, birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, they've always struck terror into my heart because I could never seem to find the appropriate gift for my wife. You might say I was ignorant, or at best a simple louse when it came to buying birthday gifts or presents for my spouse. At jewelry, I was hopeless, and though she never said a peep, if it fit into my budget, it always looked so cheap. Besides, that stuff's unhealthy, just to tell you what I mean. The last ring I gave her turned her finger green. Perfume that I have purchased was money poorly spent. Shucks, I couldn't tell a cheap one from a $7 cent. I tried to buy her furniture at auction sales and such, but she managed to convince me that I didn't have the touch. Clothes also weren't the answer. I have little wit. Just seemed to raise her dander when I bought her jeans that fit. I carpeted our bathroom and almost caused a fight. She said you should have built a sidewalk to it so I could find it late at night. Well, I finally realized what I'd been doing, and my spirits really sunk. I'd been wasting hard-earned money on some mighty worthless junk. Well, I'm glad I've gained the wisdom that middle age brings. I've learned to give my missus only useful things. It's been a dandy system. And another of my views, it doesn't hurt to give her things that I can also use. Like that tow rope that I gave her. Now that was really smart. She always gets to use it when my tractor fails to start. She seems to love these practical gifts. I'm sure that is the case. It's truly mighty evident by the expressions on her face. I bought her a brand new gooseneck horse trailer with money from our home improvement fund. She looked so darned excited, you might say she was stunned. And that hand-tooled roping saddle. You know, I'm really too darn nice, but when it comes to buying for my missus, I don't quibble over price. Just imagine her amazement. Now I'm bound to be a hit and sure to be her Valentine when she sees that silver-mounted bit. This has made making up a pleasure. After arguments and tiffs, well, once I'd have ignored her. Now I shower her with gifts. There's a lesson to this story, for I've come to believe that the joy is in the giving and not what we receive. Thank you.
This is called A Woman's Place. A woman's place is in the home. That always had made sense. They're just not built for riding broncs or fixing barbed wire fence. The woman's place is well defined throughout the cowboy West. Besides, it's our tradition. Our old ways have stood time's test. There's lots of things a woman can do way better than a man. They're at washing diapers or with a frying pan. And those ladies are a comfort when a man's ain't feeling prime. So for cooking or for looking, give me a woman every time. I've always advocated the old values of the West, and I believe, just like gospel, that the old times rules are best. A few years back, I put things off like I'm inclined to do. When branding time came rolling around, I didn't have a crew. And this girl, I'll call her Lori, said she'd agree to lend a hand. Well, I thought she meant her husband. See, I didn't understand that she meant her, you savvy, now that I was in a bind. I didn't want to break her heart. I couldn't be unkind. She said she had these horses that needed lots of miles. I said, we'll start at daylight. She says, great, and thanks, and smiles. About 3 o'clock the next morning, while I'm still snoring hard, I starts and hears a creeping gooseneck ease into the yard. We invites her in for breakfast, but she's already ate. It's an hour and a half to daybreak, and I'm already late. The crew shows up, but she's the one who gives me an assist. When old Ranger tries to buck me off, she gathers cows I missed. While I gees and haws old Ranger, her horse rolls o'er his hocks, and she cuts us cowboys 7 ways and does it orthodox. There ain't nothing that this girl can't do, and I'm feeling like a dope, so at last in desperation, I says, Lori, want a rope? She keeps 6 wrestlers busy. We're all a bustin' gut. She even finds a branded bull that I forgot to cut. For 4 long days, she shows us how a real hand operates. She wrestles and gives shots and brands. And she even castrates. When we get done, I offer up to ride and pay her back. In the nicest way that she knows how, she lets me know I lack some basic skills I never learned. My horses aren't the best, and they got more help than they can use, and I probably need a rest. So, a woman's place is in the home? To me, don't seem so strange, because I finally figured that Glory's home is on the range.
Burning hair, blood stains on his shirt, rope burns on his hands, and branding dust everywhere. But he won't miss a minute of the action. He's 5 now and squirms away from hugs that last too long. Has come home green, sick from chewing tobacco with the hand crew, and knows a lot of words his mother never taught him. He'll get drugged, run over, stomped on. She'll patch the places where hide is torn away and worry over knocked out teeth and broken bones. He'll soon be chasing wild cows and wilder women. She will swallow fear and mostly hold her tongue. But damn, it's hard because he's so little and has such a cute smile.
You know, they let me do this because they figure I'm never going to last another year. This poem is called Behold Old Men. Behold old men, when they meet me, they come as near as they can be. They gaze at me with all their might, they wrap their arms around me tight with close proximity to ear, as if sweet nothings I would hear. Then like some panting teenage fool, they often positively drool. I feel my ego start to swell. Have I become a Jezebel? Will clandestine romance begin? But then reality sets in. They squint, and then I realize they've cataracts in both their eyes. They clutch me tightly, and it's plain they need a walker or a cane to keep them on their feet, and then they pant for lack of oxygen. And something about they drool. And finally, I admit they drool because their teeth don't fit. Then, with profuse apology, they claim they didn't know 'twas me, for I had changed so through the years, and these old men, they are my peers.
What a perfect way to end the afternoon. Let's have another hand for all of our wild